we went to break, we talked about time-based medium and place-based medium. In many ways, stereoscopic photography was one of the early urges of photographers to take you somewhere else. If only I could just put you in the national park, Ansel Adams, and all the people who were paid to do that under Works Projects Administration. I think that's the kind of infrastructure we're going to get. Our job. Just as an aside, a little prankster in me, like there is a suggestion page for the new president, and I'm going to send lots of really good ones like art jobs. I'm just gonna send like every day. I'm gonna send like 5 of them just for fun.
Excellent.
So the early photographers who did that, I mean, all kidding aside, they were using stereoscopic photography because when you're looking stereoscopically, your brain is made to do, your retina and its relationship to your optic nerve are made to make you feel differently like your body is attached. What a lot of folks don't understand about flatties is that for the most part, you're talking about a monoscopic experience, which means that in truth, it's held out in front of you, and brain studies can show it engages your cerebrum the most. It is given from a psychological, physical, brain chemistry point of view. It's up here, it's here, right? Thinking. It tends to be difficult to get you embodied. You're sitting still when you watch it, right? In many cases, just laying on the couch or sitting in a theater. This old thing was all about feeling like, wait a minute, for kids who had first looked at one, it's like the zebra's right there, right? So we're going to send this around. When I saw this, I thought, now this is the company that gets it. The way to help us understand what VR viewers are. ViewMaster came out with one of the early VR viewers. And I don't know about you, but I need a cute thing like this to get me into something that feels super techy and off-putting and, I'm sorry, straight white boy shooting at things. That's how I felt about VR when I started, like, for reals. And I know I'm not supposed to say that because I should have been more sympathetic or something like this. Right? That's what I deserve. So when I saw this, I thought, thank you. Now I understand. Transport me. Bring me somewhere. I get it, right? So all of these are going to be here for you to play with. I left this one wrapped so that someone here can have the fun glory of opening. Because what you're going to see that they did that I think is so smart is that they sent the actual thing, this. And this has, and by the way, the rumor is the next version of this will be augmented reality, right? This has in it a little, what do you call those again? RFID, you know, those chips, the radio chips.
RFID.
Thank you, RFID. And our lives are like serious freaking acronym soup, right? It's so hard to remember. This, when you point the app at it the first time, it brings up like Discovery Channel. And here's the best part. This is something I'm obsessed with creating. There are a whole bunch of the old classic ones, the little like the Grand Canyon, that you can buy the same thing in this. And I want to do a bunch of comparing. I want to do a class with kids and do a bunch of comparing between the two, how they feel. You know, like of course that's never going to feel like when my 8-year-old niece, the Buffalo VR piece, like she can't stop watching it. The New York Times, it's on the New York Times app. That buffalo comes right up to the camera and she will watch that over and over and over again. But I think it's really fun for them to understand the history of stereoscopic photography. They get really into it. So I would take those pieces of Super 8 and I would put them in the reel, but guess what? It was never satisfying because it doesn't really work that way, right? So I got smarter and I started to realize what it really was, and I tried to figure out how to do it with Instamatic cameras with slots. And so I tried to figure out how big somebody would have to be in the frame to cut it out and put it in that little hole. That was obviously a really high level of difficulty to achieve what you can now do with the camera that we're going to open up and play with, okay? The reason I wanted to get a chance to open this one new is that you'll see this company is already quickly prototyping really smart solutions. This is one generation newer than that. This already has a focus wheel, a spot-freer headset. They've already gotten way smarter with it. So we're gonna, feel free. Everybody just play. This is a very lo-fi way to enjoy stereoscopic photography. when you take still photographs with your Ricoh Theta and you use your app on your mobile device, all you have to do, sorry, I forgot to have my phone out. I was trying to be a good teacher and not have my phone in the area. New world, you always need your phone. Jeez. You can simply place this like this. And so when you're on set, the reason I wanted you to see this is a 360 director's best friend.
Yeah, it's like a director's
It's fantastic. You can just quickly shoot shots about camera position. You can do like a bunch of tests, and then you can look at what you like. It's $3. Is that how much they are?
It was cheap on Amazon, yeah, I forget what it was.
What's it called? Homo. No. H-O-M-I-D-O. Homido. Homie, do you know me? So this is really terrific. There's so many more versions of all these things coming out every day, but I just am trying to make sure you understand these tools are unintimidating, right? This is based in a very well-known and very well-trodden territory, by the way, about studies of the difference of the reaction to stereoscopic photography. To me, VR is the delivery of what 3D never came through on. 3D couldn't come through on it for a whole lot of reasons. Now it will. So everybody that tells you, this will be like Google Glass and 3D, like people want to be all poo-pooey about it, and that's fine, you know, they can. But 3D was an evolutionary step. This is its delivery. Okay, so going back to the equirectangular frame. Why does it matter? Because you're about to start taking photographs in a world where life will look like you're on the inside of a beach ball. A beach ball that got taken apart and has to get sewn back together around you. So this is what, very similar to the projection on the map, you've probably all seen lots of maps that people do different projections of to say, hey, that one you're used to looking at is funkified. It's because when you spread a world out that you're going to re-stretch this way, there are all kinds of ways to make that circle look weird, right? So this is called an equirectangular frame. And this is when you fold it back up and you are inside it. You're back into the whole world. So I will now show you
walls are square and not round. So is that just what we're seeing in this, or is it that you can take that and make it round also?
No, it's that it's really helpful insofar as it's giving you it's showing you that if you were trying to re-stitch that world, those are similar to the stitch lines that you would use. The world that happens in there wouldn't look square.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's only showing you, that's the computational photography. Back to if you were getting that $1,100 credit education in grad school, we'd be doing a high-level talk about computational photography. But for today's purposes, the algorithm's represented in that. The squares are just showing you what the math is more than the image. I hope that explains it. Sorry, there's a PDF that I thought was open that isn't. Hold on a second. Oh look, my sister changed her cover photo. It's a good thing that wasn't anything saucier than that.
Yeah.
I know. I hope something saucy does happen today. That would be awesome.
Uh-oh.
No, that would be great. There it is.
There's the reception this evening.
Okay, so a lot of people feel very strongly about this, and I just want to make sure I do a decent job in defining some terms. The overarching Russian doll is understood to be immersive media. That's the category out here. Under the banner of immersive media are virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality. Today, we're not going to say a whole ton about mixed and augmented reality, just a little bit later. For the most part, we're entirely looking at the world over here.
the world of virtual reality, just to make sure everyone understands the terms, it simply refers to something that is simulated, a simulated reality. That simulated reality can be made up out of animation, objects that you use. Someone earlier was talking about using Unity software. That's the most commonly used software, which is a game engine, in which you can create a simulated environment that plays out in this headset. What I just said sounded really simple, and it is not. There are people who feel like you have to be very clear about the distinction between VR, virtual reality, that is responsive, which means pieces that are made so that you can actually move around them, through them. You might even have controllers. You might actually be in place. Has anyone here used thus far? I know you have. Has anyone here been using virtual reality where there are antennas and where you are in the room is being tracked so that it impacts what happens inside the environment?
Is that the Vive?
Yeah.
So either the Vive or the Oculus Rift, depending on, there are different ways you can use it, but there are 3 layers of virtual reality. The most simple, which we're talking about right now, look how adorable that is. The most simple is the 360. Technically speaking, some people slip a disc over, that's not virtual reality. Okay, it's just semantics, okay? But to know your semantics is helpful. This is usually monoscopic photography. The camera we're going to use, the Ricoh Theta, is monoscopic photography. Okay, so it's not quite as impactful as true stereoscopic photography, but it is the beginning of the principles of the world happening behind you, on the side of you, above you, which is why, from a thinking point of view, it's still so helpful to play with. So this is 360 cinema. Then you can go to this version on the back table. Tiffany, can you hand me on? This one? Okay. Stephanie, can you, yes. This is a Gear VR. A Gear VR is, I think now they're like $79. From the sort of paradigm point of view, it's the same exact paradigm as this. It's just that this has something else going for it. It actually has a really decent focus ring. So it's very awkward to use these with glasses. It's a real barrier for people. And honestly, like, they get really hot. So if you wear glasses, you're just gonna fog up. The whole world is gonna be like an early morning war scheme. You know, it's just like, I'm hot and it's foggy. You know, and it can be like the most lovely piece, and it annoys you. You know, but it's the same principle. You're using a mobile device. You're putting it in here. You're doing this. And the other big difference with this kind is that you actually have a control panel here, and you can drive the phone from in. You can keep this on, and you can drive the phone. As I said earlier about this new technology, it's exceptionally clunky. You hit the wrong button all the time and get pissed off. For people who weren't here earlier, I was explaining you have to be massively in love with this thing to put up with it. Like, it is definitely the person you're dating who's like a slob. You're so in love, you don't even notice the dishes at all. Hold in, because this thing is a massive pain. But once you get it down and you're laying in your perfect VR swivel chair and you're watching, for me this week, there's a piece that's melted liquid glass and binaural beats. That was a great choice. I'm way down. There are pieces that are just about sitting on a beach. There's a piece where you sit on the beach and you can choose what you want to be, what color you are, what gender you are, and you can match the legs and the hand and the drink with your own, and I cannot explain it to you. It actually calms you down in seconds flat. You guys may not know they are doing experiments with this in all kinds of ways to reduce pain for people in dental appointments, for people who have severe anxiety. Like, lots of experiments are happening. Watch this space, is what I'm saying. So these devices and the Viewmaster are really all in this taxonomy. They're really all still over here, okay? This afternoon at Cloudroom, you're going to have a chance to experience responsive VR, right? And the responsive VR is also, if you, let's say, a lot of you might be hearing about a product called Tilt Brush. Tilt Brush is phenomenal. It's a product that you can use to actually make things happen in your virtual world. You can make things that can then be printed.
And then you can move into them. Like you can
And around.
paint yourself
Around them.
an object that you can move around and in. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's so good. So cool. Yes.
So good.
Okay, does everybody understand the taxonomy? Yes.
There was in like 1896, right? Like Lumiere brothers project the first.
Just thinking about 1896.
Yeah, you know, as you do. Project the first movies in France anyway. And La Poste, the day after, writes this amazing article talking about how movies have rendered death obsolete because you can not only recreate like the physicality of a person, but their very soul is present on the screen. Meanwhile, and I totally forget his name, I apologize, but there was an art critic 2 days after that who wrote this blistering critique being like, it's in black and white, it's not in 3D, movies suck, right? So like there are these two really like opposing views, and I sort of feel like that's where we are with VR. It's like, there's this potential, because even the Lumiere brothers were like, they shot everything, every baby in France eating a grape, and then they were like, well, I guess movies are done, right? So there was obviously this potential, but at the same time, there were these humongous limitations that made cinema less than awesome for like 100 years. So, you know, just to put that in perspective a little bit, like, it's tough, like the technology hurts, but there's this amazing potential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something I was going to say later, but since you said that now, I'll say it now. For people who are in the boot camp and are going to try to come up with concepts, what I was going to ask you to watch, if you haven't already, one of the early pieces of 360 that was made by a company that was called Verse, now they're called Within, is titled The Evolution of Verse. Has anyone here seen it? Couple, okay. So do you know what it's modeled after, a couple of the shots in it? They're modeled after early cinema. Has anyone ever heard, in the history of early cinema, people would go and use these things called kinetoscopes?
Kinetoscopes, yeah.
I'm saying that right, kinetoscopes. Kinetoscope, which is really not that different than placing your face down into that Viewmaster VR, was giving you that shot at stereographic photography. But then people started to go into a theater in the dark, not their face here. This is why, in a way, VR is like coming back home again, right? You'd go in the dark together and watch a flatty, and one of the early ones was a train coming right toward the audience. And it was reported at the time that the audience was freaked out. Because imagine, in that world, nobody had ever seen anything like that before, and apparently people physically went like that. In this piece, The Evolution of Verse, there is a very clear homage to that piece of early cinema language. What I'm suggesting all of you consider is, what are some cinema or media tropes? Some can be far more current than a train coming at the audience. Like, we've gone through a lot since then in our world of use of flatties and social media, etc. What is a cinema trope that you'd like to look at and try to take a stab at? What is the VR equivalent of that? Or is there a way in which 360 brings that trope to a new place? And just as an exercise for yourself, name the trope and go for it. Don't have to, to be fair, I think it cost $500,000 to make that piece. Do I remember that correct? Joe said it the night of the fest.
Yeah,
Is that what he said?
yeah, something like that.
So when you see the level of excellence of the achievement, just know that that's a lot. What we're talking about today is the kind of prototype that you might even take a picture of 4 pictures sitting on a chair. You're simply trying to show the idea of a 360 concept. And then the execution can come in the months to follow. Does that make sense? Okay. So the evolution of verse brings us back to that whole, there are so many of those kinds of things starting to happen in VR where people are looking back at that and saying, wait a minute, this is really cool. I heard, though I have not seen it, famously there's a short film that played in arcades that was considered kind of dirty called The Kiss. How long did The Kiss last? Like 5 minutes or something?
Oh, no, much shorter than that. I mean, the reel itself was only capable of doing like 35 seconds. So it was
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, it was just
I had it in my head that it was longer than that,
No.
but okay.
It's also really weird because they're like talking while kissing.
Yeah.
It's very awkward.
Yeah.
Big
very,
mustache.
Very awkward.
Not,
But I hear that there is an artist working, of course, somewhere in Europe, on a piece of erotica that's supposed to be the answer to The Kiss. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. The rumor is that it'll be at Sundance. So, yes.